Awesome.
Who's facilitating today?
Me.
Awesome.
Hi. Hi. Well, I guess it is 12:02, so let's get it going. So there's some new folks here I heard joining us today, and also we have plenty of time because it's informal. I do have an activity that I selfishly would like us to do together, and perhaps we can even incorporate our introductions in with it. I'm copying this. So welcome to the Clean Network call. Today is an informal discussion, and so it would be great if we everyone went around and did a more in-depth introduction, and then afterwards maybe we can do announcements. Is that okay with everyone? And I selfishly am going to have you all help me think about something that I've been thinking about with our climate change education manager. We're teaching a course this spring for Hamline University called Theories and Models of Climate Change Education. And I would love everyone in their introduction to share who they are and where they're coming from, and to answer the question, what is climate change education, when you introduce yourself. And this is like a low pressure. We are all super nice people. This is super low pressure situation. I have included a link in the chat to a Jamboard where you are welcome. I would love to have people add Post-it notes. And if you've never used a Jamboard before, you click on the link, it opens up, and on the left-hand side, there's a bunch of tools, and one of them says sticky note, and you just click on it and you write on your sticky note and hit save, and it lands on the board. So is everyone cool with that? Awesome. Gosh, does that mean that I need to go first, or can I pass it on? Oh,
You're the
God.
facilitator. You
I
can do whatever you
haven't
want,
prepared
Chris.
my answer yet. You're supposed to inform it. All right. Hi, I'm Kristen. I'm Kristen Poppleton. I'm the Senior Director of Programs at Climate Generation, a Will Steger legacy. And I am also co-chair of the Clean Network. And I, to answer this question, what is climate change education? I've been thinking a lot about climate change education more recently through the lens of climate justice education and how that connects, and even more specifically about how that's important, because that means that you're thinking about education as the solution and as a positive action-oriented thing. And so climate change education, I'm seeing people put, is connected, of course, to all disciplines, all content. It's really the umbrella education. At one point in time, I know I used to say, like, climate change education is just education. I live in that realm. And I'll leave it at that, not to get too complicated and put pressure on people to feel like they have to be complicated. So I'm going to just pass it off. We're going to call on people. So I'm going to call on Jen to go next.
Sorry, I was just like looking at my sticky note. Okay, hi everybody. My name is Jen Kretzer, and I'm the Director of Climate Initiatives at the Wild Center in upstate New York, and I am coming to you from occupied Haudenosaunee land. And I also am on the Clean Leadership Board and on the Action for Climate and Power Steering Committee, of which some of you are members of. And in terms of what is climate change education, I was just thinking about this. I think of it, building on Kristen's thoughts around justice. I think about it from like a community, like it's community-based education, that it's sort of thinking about the whole community and community could be very broadly defined to your like geography, but also maybe a sort of a broader look, and that it values equity and justice. It also is forward thinking and solutions oriented, but that there is like this very much systems community perspective. Oh, should I bounce it to someone else, Kristen? Or I'm going to bounce it to Eric.
Over on the Jamboard, trying to think about what is great. Thanks for doing the Jamboards, those are fun. I'm Eric Havel. I've been doing climate change education for 25 plus years, mostly informal world. I was at a science center for about 22 years, and I'm working with a small nonprofit in the Bay Area called Community Resources for Science. I'm doing a couple other side jobs right now around energy education and just museum folks in general. Project that I've been working on, looking at a lot of folks that were laid off like me as a result of COVID, and how they're engaging in spaces and stepping back and thinking about new efforts. And I guess, yeah, climate change for me is really understanding the Earth as one system. I think, and it's closed, and humans can absolutely have an impact on that system. And a lot of times I think a lot of folks don't see it that way. They see that it's, it's this endless sky above us and endless resources that we can keep extracting, but really it's a limited system. We, it's our spaceship, if you will, and we need to take care of it and everything that's on it. So it's kind of everything, like a couple of you already said. I will pass it on to Deb Morrison.
All right, I'm Deb L. Morrison. If any of you realize there's a Deb K. Morrison in the world working in climate justice, just saying. You can call me L. So yeah, I have a really big answer. I'm trying to think of what the short and truncated answer. I'm at the University of Washington, by the way. I'm a learning scientist and work at the intersection of climate justice education largely. Anyway, I think maybe the thing I'll add that might be my thing to add is I think about the who and the what of it. So the who is at the table to define and design learning. The who is able to say what constitutes learning related to justice and climate. And I think that's something that often gets forgotten as people operate in their current silos of the current structures, which are themselves colonial. To be able to think about education, we sometimes just reproduce inequity without even knowing it. So thinking about who is engaged in the design work with us is fundamentally part of climate change justice work. I'm supposed to toss it to somebody, aren't I? Okay, Amy, let's go to Amy.
Oof. Such an easy question and such a hard question. I think that I'm Amy Frame. I work at 10 Strands in California, and I think I've been steeped in our environmental principles and concepts enough that I think climate change education is helping people understand human environment interactions that have led to unhealthy and inequitable systems, and also understand how humans can have positive impacts on those systems going forward. That's all I got. Frank Granshaw, it's you.
Took me a few moments to get unmuted. I'm Frank Granshaw. I am a senior advisor for Greater Portland Sustainability Education Network and a part-time instructor at Portland State. I spent about 25 years teaching community college geoscience, and about 10 years before that in science museums. A big bulk of that time was doing energy education. So all of this comes sort of close to home. the sticky note that I stuck up was one that was reflective of the fact that I'm a science geek, but it also has a little bit more of a history to it. I stuck up one about the climate education is just learning how to maintain our planetary life support system in a sustainable and equitable way. And one of the reasons I use that is because going back to my community college days, we had a lab tech who loved to listen to Rush Limbaugh all the time. And we of course got graced by that quite a bit. But he was a really nice guy, and I had quite a few really good discussions with him. And one of the discussions I remember having was one about he was poo-pooing the idea of environmentalism. I mean, it's saving the earth and all that stuff, sort of stuff. And I said, I'm a geologist. Saving the earth isn't really part of the ball game because it's been around without us. It'll be around without us again. And so when we started talking in terms of maintaining our planetary life support system, it's sort of like the bells, the lights went on. So yeah. Anyway, let's see. I'm trying to think. Eliza, have you gone yet?
No, I haven't. And I'm glad to be new to the group. My name is Eliza Riley. I'm the director of a national organization that's been around for about 20 years called the National Center for Science and Civic Engagement. And our primary work is in undergraduate STEM reform. And what we do is help faculty link their content delivery in chemistry, physics, biology, whatever the science content is, including technology and computer science, to civic questions like climate change. So our signature program is called Sensor, Science Education for New Civic Engagements and Responsibilities. So for me, what is climate change? Well, a lot of our work does, without even trying, go to social justice questions and equity questions when you started examining science in a social context, a civic context. And so the two things that really occur to me are systems thinking. All of our courses try to get at the systems approach to whatever the question or the problem is. And the other thing is, I'd like to point out, I'm glad to see so many informal science educators here, because we actually have a pretty strong strand and set of connections with informal science participants. But this is one thing I'd like to say is that our community, there's a huge demand right now for help in adjusting what they're teaching to include climate science. So that's the biggest call I get, is for people, for example, with COVID, everybody jumped on board with COVID and started teaching chemistry, biology, whatever it was, through COVID. Our people are very fast. They turn on a dime. They can grab a question and start incorporating it. But climate is harder for everybody. So I'm very looking forward to seeing how we can connect the dots between all the expertise you have and our community. Oh, let me call somebody else. How about, I think everybody's gone. Why don't I go back to Wendy, since I know Wendy?
Hi, Eliza. I'm so glad you connected to this network. I think both entities will benefit greatly from the increased conversation. And it builds off the call we had last week, where we were talking about more organizations and that work in community space outside of just the traditional climate ed this group does. And then suddenly I met you and I built it. I was just like, aha, here's another terrific connection. So thanks for being here today, and thanks for sharing. I'm Wendy Abshire. I am a meteorologist by training, who's had most of my professional career in science education. First of all, it was in professional development for meteorologists and related scientists via the web. And these last 4.5 years, I've been the director of the American Meteorological Society's education program. We are a small program that's a part of the AMS that exists because the AMS membership believes that earth science literacy, broadly defined, is a worthy and lofty goal of the society's time and investment. And the way that we choose to contribute to that is by, we're a K-13 program. We educate K-12 educators through graduate courses in weather, ocean, and climate science so that they can become more knowledgeable and confident in teaching those topics in their classrooms, and also learn how to leverage real data sets in doing the teaching of those three subjects. And then we leverage that curriculum to create undergraduate curriculum packages for faculty, especially faculty that may not be versed in teaching earth science, but suddenly find themselves being asked to teach weather, ocean, or climate science, to adopt our packages ideally suited for non-science majors. So that's how we go about our goal of earth science literacy and increasing it. And so our niche in teaching climate has always been from that scientific, factual, scientific society approach to make sure people have the basic understanding. And by people, we mean educators, because we all know many K-12 educators or anyone that's involved in education may not have that background, and they might be working from places of hearsay. They might have incomplete knowledge. They certainly may not know how to trust good data from bad data. And so our climate education is in basic scientific facts and understanding, so that in turn teachers can go ahead and pass that on through whatever lens. And I love all of your answers, because all of those are also climate education. And I'll just, since this is our informal day, and yes, we're recording, I'll say that when I started this job, and because of my background, I was really focused on solely the scientific understanding, much like scientists was, well, as long as people understand the facts, then everything else should just take care of itself, because once you understand the facts, of course you would be motivated to act, and you would be just, and but we've all learned on this journey that is just anything but true. And so all of these things are needed. But I stand on the fact that making sure you know the facts is still an important part of the climate education process. So that's our little niche, and I will go add to the sticky board now that I'm done sharing, and I will popcorn to Paige. I don't believe you've gone.
I have not. Hey, everybody. My name is Paige Engelbrechtson, and I am the Nature Center Education Specialist in Highlands, North Carolina, with the Highlands Biological Foundation. I am probably the least qualified to answer this question, as my organization has just started to pivot into climate change, kind of with me prompting it to. We're very small. We're centered mostly on our geographic area, but in trying to figure out how we can work on climate change education, I've come at it with a lot of environmental education angle, which is I would like to give my audience the knowledge that climate change is happening and awareness of its impacts, and the skills to make decisions, to take action if they'd like to, particularly thinking about how here at the individual and the community level, we can be, as many other people have reiterated, like a positive force. It's happening, but what can we actively do in helping our 2-county geographic areas start to get traction on that? So, and I will pop it to Ann Gold.
Hi, Paige. Thank you. That's such a nice activity, Kristen, to just think and reflect and also listen to what other people share. There's so much has been said already with this amazing group here. So let me introduce myself. I'm Anna Gold. I'm the director of the Series Education and Outreach Program, which is at the University of Colorado here in Boulder. And I'm the also on the Clean Leadership Board and the PI for the funded part of Clean, which is curating the collection of Clean and the professional development. And we are at an environmental research institute, and so I'm a climate scientist by training, so very much like what Wendy said, I came at it a lot from this, here's science knowledge, how do we curate this, and how do we connect the science that's done with the public? And so that's really been my lens for a long time, and it's been shifting so radically to really add all this understanding. It's not a knowledge deficit that we are dealing with. It's so much more. There's a lot of justice. There's a lot of political and like other barriers that people may experience. And then there's a lot of fear about, you know, if you open yourself up to not knowing about climate, it just makes yourself vulnerable, and it's so easy to look away from that. So I feel like I've learned a lot from being part of this group for a long time, and I really appreciate all these conversations we've had and the journey that I feel like I've gone on with all of you, from my totally thinking, here's a great resource, here's some data, just look at that. Of course, it's going to make sense to where we are right now. Anyway, let's see who else hasn't gone. I think, Jim, I don't think you've gone. Have you?
Great, thanks. Hi, Anna. By the way, Anna, just a quick message on things. I want to make sure we stay on top of the California Science Conference too, if there's anything toward that. I'm not forgetting that. I promise to be helpful on that. Okay, that's coming up in March. We've got a deadline. So let's see, Jim Callahan, climatechangeeducation.org, Mobile Climate Science Labs, and just so not totally pigeonholed into informal science, also the climate science specialist at Lowell School in Washington, D.C. So many places to go with different things. One is, by the approach that we're able to take at Lowell, is I focus on the science, but it's an active team. The other biggest person is Natalie Sapert, and she's a language arts teacher. So we're approaching things in a way that totally allows her to integrate language arts. The kids write scripts, the kids record voiceovers, they write stories, participate in conferences. We're now setting up our own TV studio. It's a modest one, but be able to live stream, and so we can work both West Coast and East Coast at the same time. We have a social science teacher, part of it, visual arts, language, music arts. It's project-based, social, place-based. Anyway, it's a very holistic approach. So that's a pretty cool opportunity that goes things. Let's see, on the question of social justice, that's always been a part of, when there's so many reasons, why do we do so much with the science festivals? Well, one of them is that the science festivals themselves are, at least the ones here in California, have as their mission social justice, and that's not a new thing. This is since they were established 10 years ago, was to be able to bring science, hands-on science, to the communities that normally wouldn't. Science museums are incredible. Eric and I have worked together. They're essential, but they tend to be like $50 to show up, right? It's harder to. It's important to as well go out to these communities. The science festival that will be the first live streamed one in the world, as far as we know, will be on March 13th, and that's based in the North Bay, like Sonoma, Marin County, Napa County. There's, for people, everybody knows about wine up there, but also wildfires. That science festival really excels in drawing in the Latino community. People call it Latinx and Chicano. The community of folks is very strong on that, and something to be very proud of. And so that's one we like. That's one of the reasons we're there, and it's very strong. At the same time, it's working to better draw in the African American community. Other events we take place in are very strong in the African American community going in there. Anyway, that's a little bit to draw in, and what I like, one of the things that's so great about CLEAN is we have different people working in different areas in different ways, and we can learn from each other and build off each other, and there's sort of an invitation, I think, from each of us, I believe, from each of us to the other is, if there's some way what we're doing can help what you're doing, let's work together. Okay, thanks. Let's see. Sorry. How about away for a few down there, as I was going to do, John, make sure we're including things. Eric, you've spoken. Don, you haven't spoken, have you?
Hi there. I am Don Haas. I am the Director of Teacher Programming at the Paleontological Research Institution, which has two public venues, the Museum of the Earth, which is a natural history museum, and the Cayuga Nature Center. And we also do programming and create resources on a national scale, and there's a link to most of our climate and energy resources, which I think you'll find substantial and I think well done. I am also a member of the Clean Leadership Board, and I think climate change education is a lot of things that have been said. I think it's probably the most important example of systems education, which is tremendously important and generally not done well enough. I also am very, very much interested in trying to figure out, and here's Velma, this is my assistant. I think the interdisciplinary vision of climate change education is really important to work towards. And one of the sort of soundbite that comes to mind about that and other issues related to climate change education is that from, dear, his name will come back to me right after I click off my microphone. But we need to move from doing what we know how to do to doing what needs to be done. And I think that's a great challenge for climate change education. It's that a lot of the related issues we've been working on for a long time, but haven't made the kind of progress we hope for. So there you go. And I don't think Katie's gone yet, is that right?
That is correct. Thanks, Don. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Boyd. I work at Series Education and Outreach, the same group Anna is in, and I am also part of that work I do for that group is as a Clean Program Manager on the funded side of Clean, helping with the managing the review process and collection and our support for teachers on climate change education. What is climate change education? It's such a great question. And going towards the end here, I'm just going to kind of throw it back to like, yes, I think everything everyone has said. I'm similar to Wendy and Anna, where I kind of came into this, not necessarily thinking that we had to like give everybody all facts only, but that was, you know, the science information was important to sort of back up. And I'm just learning so much more about climate change and the intersectionality of it and the interdisciplinary sort of solutions that it's going to need. And I'm just expanding my view so much more of what climate change is. Also, having moved into some informal education, informal science education spaces for a couple of years and working there, and just my experiences, I think, have also helped me expand the view beyond sort of like classrooms and even the informal science spaces. You know, there's so much of it happens at community levels. There's a lot that happens in workforce when people are talking about how to shift business or shift other kinds of industry, or, you know, there was a group of lawyers who came out a while back and put a statement around climate change and things like that. So anyways, I just think it's just very similar to what Amy had said earlier. Actually, I really liked her view on it's helping folks understand that connection with the environment, connection with the earth, and understanding our role in it, and helping to facilitate those kinds of broadening of perspectives, I guess. I think justice and you know, environmental social justice has to be centered as well. That's a big thing that I think has come out in the last few years. But really that sort of connection and understanding the role that humans play in environmental interactions and the Earth system. And so there's a lot of systems thinking. Anyways, I'm pretty much just summarizing what everyone else said, so I'm going to stop. But I do agree with all of you and just this idea that it's really broad and expansive and hard to narrow down. So it's a great question, and I might, Kristen, I might bookmark this Jamboard because it's such a great little brainstorming session. So thanks for bringing this up. And I'm going to pass it off to Emily, I think is one of our last, other than our away, Nancy and away for a few, I think are the last couple folks who haven't gone. So I'm going to toss it over to Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily Corin. I'm at Stanford. I work on adapting entertainment education methods from public health communication for climate education for broad informal audiences. I think I'm going to call on Nancy next because she's playing with me in the local community level here. But I think finding community pathways to participate by identifying and amplifying community-led solutions for building, safe, equitable community. And I think of that really as integrated in how the community already functions. So finding partnership pathways with existing community organizations where we can support a lot of existing programs, at least in our community. I know that that's not ubiquitous everywhere, to help people participate in climate solutions. And on that note, I'm going to pass it to Nancy next.
Emily's the one who got me here, and I kind of sneaked in under the wire. So I'm so glad you're here, Eliza, because I'm getting the opportunity to get those introductions in the informal setting. I'll start with where Emily and I are working together in Santa Cruz on the advising the Santa Cruz climate action planning process that the city is committed to, that will govern what they do for the next 10 years, and helping them have what I was calling a robust climate engagement, but now having learned about ACE through you all, I'm calling it, let's turn this into climate empowerment, which was the vision all along, that brings not only understanding, but agency to people, their sense of that something can be done, and helping them find what their particular part might be. In my own case, my background is I was a social scientist and ended up with a doctorate in philosophy of education, with a particular interest in higher education, and was for a long time working on a book that I was calling Higher Education and Human Survival, because as a philosopher, I got to think about what we were doing and the sense of its potential for shaping both the shared cultural understandings, the shift in cultural understandings, especially in what we do in the lower division, curricula, and a fuller integration, interdisciplinary approach to that. And then looking at how, in turn, higher education shapes every profession across the board. And every profession is part of the solution as well as part of the problem, and can be infused with these understandings. Climate education is kind of the foot in the door. It's the most urgent do or die situation that we're up against, but it opens, I keep saying, breakdown allows breakthrough to the larger social transformations, because unhappy human beings will destroy the world. Unhappy human beings are the most dangerous force on the planet. Happy human beings, on the other hand, can truly be transformative. So these things are deeply interconnected. And one of my earliest experiences was in Boston during the desegregation crisis. And from the very beginning, the informal education and not only empowerment of people usually marginalized, but to benefit from the enormous talents and insights and gifts that are there. Yes, be at the table, all affected by a decision should have a say in the decision, but also to bring the collective problem solving together. And I see informal and formal education both as that larger purpose is to elicit, enable, and empower our higher purposes in a fully inclusive way, that we learn how to learn from each other. We help each other make sense of the situation we're in. And I'm particularly interested in the last 20 years in public engagement and empowerment. I had, for the 15 years prior to that, overseen curriculum development and approval for all of the community colleges in California, and trained faculty in those areas with, again and again, this notion of infusing the critical issues throughout the curriculum. Curriculum is, when you're talking about who's at the table for that, that is the point where formally we make the decisions as a society. We usually don't notice we're making them, we just accept them. But that's where we decide what our future will look like socially and culturally, to the extent that we're sharing it. We're creating the foundations for that. So sorry, I'm getting off on something that I'm so pleased to be with so many other educators who really understand the importance of educating people with systems understanding throughout, with civic development skills across all the fields, with the ability to listen and work together, and to deal today with a crisis that, as people, friends of mine in their 20s keep reminding me, yes, we have to save the world, but each of us individually, my friend said, we're staring down the long barrel. If you're in your 20s, you're staring down the long barrel of the 21st century. And so also helping people figure out how they personally are going to survive and thrive and contribute. And that's the other dimension of teaching, the opportunity to be so close to people as their own lives are unfolding in the context of climate change, with the support of community, coming full circle, the sense of agency in shaping how your community will respond. And I will call on Patrick David Chandler.
Okie doke. Well, I'm feeling a little under the weather today, so I'm gonna keep my camera off. Please pardon me for that. But I will do my best to dive in head first to this discussion. I teach a creative climate communication course on Tuesdays this semester, which is why I'm always going to be late for calls, but it's a course that responds deeply to the issues we discuss here. I guess maybe to add to this conversation, personally, I've been thinking a lot about relationships in 3 or 4 different realms. Relationship with self and honoring positionality, relationship with others, reestablishing genuine connections, relationship with land and place to think about what it means to move from resource to relationship, and relationship with time in the context of how much our constriction of time has caused this issue of climate change. And especially to think about what it means to transition from resources to relationship, and ask not what is that river, but who is that river, what that would really mean to embrace that idea. And also really trying to be more aware of that aspect of time and how that has deeply impacted and caused climate change. I think that learning and teaching about those 2 concepts while keeping in mind relationships with others and positionality of self responds to that question for me.
And I think, is John Webster the only one who hasn't introduced himself yet? Patrick, you didn't know who everyone. Oh, and Tiffany. We've met. Okay, so either Tiffany or John would be the next person to pass it off to Patrick.
Okay, John looks like he's raring to go.
You're muted, John. Nope. Now you're remuted. Oh.
Is it working now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. I had to change out my mic and hopefully my dogs don't bark. So I'm John Webster. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm a biochar producer, and our primary focus is on taking waste streams and converting them into long-term soil addendum for carbon sequestration. As part of that, I'm also involved as an associate, an advisory board member of the Utah Permaculture Collective. We work with the Park City, Utah Office of Sustainability. We're working with local educators a lot in building knowledge pathways inside the STEM education system in order to get the young people involved. And I also work with a number of other community gardens. So, and then we're also working to sponsor new locations of the Local Carbon Network, which is a group out of California that's really focused on soil science and things like composting and biochar. So I'm approaching my focus on education is about getting hands in the dirt. It's about soil science, soil health, how we can take larger technical concepts, minimalize them, educate, and engage, because without engagement, not much is going to happen. And frankly, I also have a lot of concerns that we need to make sure that our children and even other adults do not feel that this is hopeless. So a lot of my focus is about, yeah, Nancy, much praise for what you had to say. But yes, what we need to do is we need to engage and be engaged and find ways to identify the joy, even when a lot of the messaging may be not so enjoyable to hear. So real glad I found this group. I don't know if I'm entitled to be in it, but I very much appreciate it. So who's next?
I'll go ahead.
Tiffany's our last, yeah.
Yeah, hi everyone, good morning. Ditto, ditto, ditto. Nancy, I especially resonated a lot with what you were talking about. My name's Tiffany Boyd. I'm a lifelong educator, recently retired elementary teacher after 27 years, and found this group almost a year ago, about a week into the pandemic, when I attended one of Jessica Bean and Katie Boyd's clean webinars, and just been learning so much from all of you since then. We have a group called Classrooms for Climate Action. And similar to what Nancy was talking about, we really try to build up teacher and student agency and bring together climate and sustainability goals of a local municipality and have students and teachers be the ones to carry it out. So we're really trying to make that community connection between the students, their learning, and how it applies to the actionable goals of a local municipality. So I dropped in the chat, you might have seen, we just had our presentations today for a bill that's coming up in the Colorado legislature. We had second graders design pollinator license plates, and that's going to be passed. So we supported teachers doing a whole unit on the role that pollinators play and how climate change is affecting pollinators. The kids did an amazing job today. We had 75 second graders share with state senators, all online, all virtual. We got a local plastic bag tax passed this fall, working with kindergarten through 12th graders. So we're really trying to give, we're steering from behind, we're letting the agency of students drive. Project-based learning is our force. We want kids to have a choice. It's amazing when you build kids' background knowledge about a variety of topics, they will hone in on what's important to them. We have a bunch of 5th graders right now that are up in arms about educational redlining and writing letters to Governor Polis to make sure his COVID relief money is distributed equitably and given to the students that need it. So we're really trying to take what's happening in real time and give teachers and kids the agency to make things happen. So glad to be here.
I think, is that everyone? I think we hit everyone. That was super fun for me. I'm glad everyone participated. It's really fun because I think Nancy was talking about it and Jen bounced on it a little bit, that I've been working with this team of folks working on action for climate empowerment. And I feel like the work that's happening just in this group here just like covers the swath of that, from formal to informal to training and public participation engagement. So it's just fun to get this little microcosm of the community into a space to talk about their work. We're at 1:45, and usually we allow for announcements at these meetings as well. And so I'll go first since I'm here, and I'm just going to plop in the chat some information to share about some upcoming things if they're of interest to you all. We have coming up this month our Youth Climate Justice Summit, which is usually focused on Minnesota, but because once again of the pandemic, we've got kids coming in from around the country to participate this year. So if you have high schoolers in your life that are interested in this, please join, and I'll throw in the information when I'm done talking. Our Talk Climate Institute is in March. It is an amazing opportunity to join with other folks who are interested in developing their climate story, their personal narrative, and then think about how they can use that story to take action. I highly recommend it. Once again, that is virtual as well. And our Teacher Summer Institute is sort of soft opening for registration. If you feel like you have to be the first person to register, it's open. And as a side note to that, there is an opportunity which we're kind of closing in on, but I'll let this group know of if you were identifying leaders around the country that want to lead cohorts of at a geographic level at the Institute. Day 2 of the 3-day Institute will focus, each cohort will be doing their own separate 1-day training. And there's folks here actually on this call that I know are probably going to be leading cohorts in California, New York, around the country. If that's something you're interested in, I'll have the link, but please let me know. There is financial compensation for that, not a ton, but some. We have 2 jobs opening up in the next week. Just a teaser, I'll put the link where they'll be: a climate change curricula and resource coordinator and a Teach Climate Network coordinator position. So if you have people in your life, or you are people in life interested in that, we are pretty sure that needs to be Minnesota based, but we're open to discussion. And who wouldn't want to live in Minnesota, quite honestly?
Kristen, are you going to put those links on the Whole Clean Network, or do you have them yet?
No, I'll put it in the chat where it'll be on our jobs page, but we'll share it out with the network for sure.
Okay, great. Because
Yeah.
I know some maybe people.
Great. And then finally, we are, like I mentioned, as we stick this off, we're teaching a course, a short course this spring on theories and models of climate change education through Hamline University, which has really cheap graduate credits if it's something you need or are interested in. And that's all online virtual. So you don't have to be in Minnesota for that. So it's a long list, but those I don't come on very often. So giving you all the updates on stuff. Does anyone else have any announcements they want to share? Katie.
Thanks. I have a just quick one. Clean is doing their webinars. They are currently going on, and we have an elementary teacher focused webinar about strategies for teaching climate and climate change at the elementary level, happening on Thursday this week. So share it around if you're interested. And we have like 4 more webinars happening after that for the following 4 weeks. So keep checking them out. And I don't know, Patrick, if your announcement's going to be this or not, but also contact Patrick if anybody's interested in presenting on the Clean Network this semester. Those are my 2, thanks.
It might be too soon, but just based on the pace of my connection with Eliza, I would love to have a presentation to better understand your programs and impacts, Eliza, sometime in our year ahead. You're on mute.
I think that might be great to do something really brief, but to show the range of our work, because I can see everybody on this call fitting into some aspect of it and finding colleagues. It's so well aligned with whole, you know, even though it's focused on climate, we have many courses that do aspects of environmental and climate change. I mean, so we have soil courses, we've got people working on the economics of climate change, people working on, I wrote some of them down, pollinators. We've got a wonderful pollinators group. So I think maybe if something like a 15-minute, I could pretty much lay out both the formal and the informal and the lines of work. There's one line of work that I think might be very interesting to people. We're just ending a grant that is called Transcending Barriers for Success, about connecting Indigenous knowledge to Western knowledge. And it's really about working with Indigenous communities around climate, around environmental questions. It's led by the universities of Hawaii and Alaska, but it has partners in Montana, Arizona, and other things. And that's starting to grow, that network of linking to Indigenous communities with a lot of knowledge about the environment that needs to be recovered, and can teach us a lot. So
I just heard a yes.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay, well, if I can do whatever you would work for you, I could certainly do. And I could also sort of round up a couple of key people who could, back me up too. So
that would be great. And just in case you're not connected, or no, Patrick Chandler is the one to connect with on that. His hand is raised, so maybe he can go there.
Yeah, Patrick, why don't you go? And then Don, I see you also. Make sure that there's room for Don in the 7 minutes we have left, Patrick, unless there's other hands raised. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever needed to give a 7-minute announcement. I hope I never will. So briefly, yeah, thanks, Eliza. I'll put my email in the chat here. Let's connect about that presentation. I'd love to get it scheduled. In other news, I'm the editor of a special journal issue on humor and environmental education. So if that is your realm, or people whose realm that is, please have them contact me if you think they might like to write an article. I'll get this announcement up in the network too. Just finalize this call for proposals a couple of days ago though. So yeah.
NSTA, the National Science Teaching Association, canceled its annual conference again this year, and then said, let's do a virtual thing instead. And the due date for proposals for that is February 16th.
It got extended.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, let me find it for you.
Okay, awesome. And a bunch of people on this call were part of a half-day short course that was to happen at the actual conference. That's not happening. In the virtual conference, they don't have half-day sessions, so I'm working to restructure that into 3 one-hour sessions. And if you've got bandwidth to help figure out how to sort that out, let me know. And NSTA also announced this week that they've hired a new executive director who I was pleased to see has museum experience.
No, you're right, Don. It's the registration date that I had in my head. It's the 16th is the, I guess I should change that on my calendar. Okay.
Yeah, and while I have the floor, I'll also note that Deb and I are going to be leading a discussion about diversity and inclusion in clean. What's the date on that again, Deb? In a few weeks.
I don't know, it's coming. Oh, here, facilitator, 16th, next week, isn't it? No, that's my facilitator role. I think it's later.
It looks like that is scheduled for March 2nd.
March 2nd.
So Deb and I need to talk about what we're going to talk about before March 2nd. I'm glad it's not next week, but know that it's coming, that we are trying to figure out how to do better.
And maybe if I can throw one additional thing in on that. There has been I'm in the middle of the AAAS meeting right now, as some of you might be. And there has been, from some other related things with AGU and the Ecological Society of America, there's been some really interesting conversations across different organizations. And Wendy, I keep thinking of you now. So about potentially hosting some kind of joint webinar among us around DEI. So, and framing it differently, because I'm not a big fan of the DEI framing, but and really thinking about that from the context of climate specifically. So like a climate justice, sort of equity, inclusion, kind of to the question today, ironically, And so I'm talking with Dennis Ojima on Thursday about it, and sort of thinking through what that might look like, a preliminary conversation, but I'll reach out, Wendy. I totally have you in my head on that as it goes forward.
And I'll also.
Yeah, Deb, if I could jump in for a second, if anybody, including you, who could give good links or things to catching up on AAAS, I readily admit I have been registered for quite some time. I'm registered to go, but I'm just now getting into what's good to go to AAAS, what are recommended sessions or connections or online meetings or whatever. If anyone's got that, very valuable. Thanks.
Yeah. You know, I'm a big fan of the evening social events and following the education strand and the societal impacts strand, which is like section X. So Q and X are really helpful for many of the folks here. And so they're really helpful, but the evening sessions have been very good, like really interactive and kind of fun. So.
Thank you. I'm writing all that down.
And so I'll also note that I'll have more formal information about this, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, is that I am part of, Lisa White and I are co-hosts of a series of workshops on improving education and outreach for scientific ocean drilling, with good attention to diversity and inclusion, or other better labels for that sort of thing. So we will have pairs of sessions in late April, May, June, and July that are all online. That'll hopefully lead to a face-to-face workshop sometime in later in 2021. More info on that will come.
Well,
1 minute
amazing.
left on our time. Is there any short announcements that folks had?
I want to announce that I'm very happy to have found all of you. I very much appreciate your efforts. And
thanks, John. Emily, do you have your hand raised?
We're happy you're here.
This will be super quick. Just a reminder that I am soliciting chapters right now for the storytelling to accelerate climate solutions. So if y'all have content you want looped into that supports this group, that's a community space that I'm organizing for updates. Send me notes. Thanks.
Do you want to put your email in the chat?
Yep.
I'll leave the room open for a minute so then folks can grab that if they need. But otherwise, I think we're at the top of the hour here, Kristen, right?
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
You.
Oh, hey, Patrick. I need to check with Anna. I'm not going to be here next week. I'm out all week, so I'm not going to be on the clean call. So I will try to remember to tell the facilitator to log in as clean and or check if Anna can join so that we have somebody who can record and all of that. So.
Okay. In general, do you feel like